e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, e takes d4, knight takes d4, queen e7, knight f5, queen takes e4 check, knight e3, knight f6, bishop d3, queen h4, castle kingside, d5, bishop f5, bishop e6, rook e1, castle queenside, g3, queen h5, queen takes h5, knight takes h5, c3, knight f6, a4, rook e8, bishop takes e6 check, rook takes e6, rook d1, knight e5, b4, c6, knight d2, h5, knight f5, g6, knight d4, rook e8, h4, bishop g7, bishop a3, knight f g4, knight 2 b3, knight c4, bishop c1, knight f6, bishop f4, knight e4, rook d c1, bishop e5, bishop takes e5, rook takes e5, knight f3, rook e7, knight b d4, rook h e8, king g2, king c7, rook a2, knight e d6, rook c c2, a5, knight b3, b6, knight f d4, rook e1, b takes a5, knight takes a5, knight takes a5, b takes a5, rook e2, rook 1 takes e2, knight takes e2, rook e4, knight d4, rook e1, king f3, knight e4, king g2, knight takes c3, rook c2, rook e4, knight takes c6, king takes c6, rook takes c3 check, rook c4, rook f3, f5, rook a3, d4, king f1, rook c2, rook b3, rook a2, rook b8, rook takes a4, rook g8, king d5, king e2, rook a2 check, king f3, a4, rook takes g6, a3, rook g5, king e5, rook takes h5, rook takes f2 check, king takes f2, a2, g4, a1 queen, rook takes f5 check, king e4, h5, d3, rook f7, queen d4 check, King G3. D2. Rook F4 check. King D3. Rook takes D4 check. King takes D4. H6. D1 queen. King H4. King E5. H7. King F4.